Hello, welcome to a tutorial about CoppeliaSim, or formerly known as VREP. This is an introduction video in which I will explain how VREP works, a brief introduction about it. Okay, I'm Leopoldo Armesto, I'm a senior lecturer at the Universitat Politécnica de Valencia, and these videos correspond to a set of videos in which I will introduce this software, and they are part of the robotic courses I teach in the university. So the aim of the video, in this particular video, is to introduce CoppeliaSim, or as I said before, formerly known as VREP. It's a robotic simulator. Actually, it's a very good simulator that can simulate any type of robot, and it has a lot of tools that makes simulations a lot easier. So the idea is to briefly show some of the capabilities, and for a first-time user, then I will just show how the user interface works, and also mostly how to move the camera to display different objects in my scene, how to pan, rotate, and zoom, also how to add objects to my scene. And I will explain about the model browser and the scene hierarchy, and also I will briefly show how to see different simulation pages in order to have different views, and briefly explain about the physics engine library, which is one of the key components of the software. In order to follow this course, I assume that you have some previous knowledge, particularly in programming, because later on we will see some videos about programming a robot. And in the free educational version of CoppeliaSim, uses a language which is called Lua. It's, let's say, not so popular language, not least as many other or popular languages like Python, but is easy and quite flexible. So this is the free version, the educational version of this software. And also I assume that you have some basic concepts about robotic system. If there's the need of explaining something in particular, I will do that along the videos, okay, so don't worry about that. And if you have some knowledge about 3D simulation softwares, basically to understand geometries, 3D shapes, and how these simulation softwares works in order to run dynamic properties of them and so on, this is usually quite recommended. But yeah, we will see all details. Okay, so let's modify. Let's move to the software, and this is CoppeliaSim, and this is the default scene as we can see. And here we can see obviously some menus and some icons here on the top that will be commonly used for us, and also some icons here on the left that we will use for different purposes. Okay, so we will see some of them. Okay, so first thing is these three icons here will allow us to modify the way we interact with the view here. So the first one, which is selected by default, is the pan. So I can pan my view, so I can shift it if I click, or I can rotate my view. Okay, this is also I can do a zoom out or zoom in. Okay, and here we can add, for instance, let's say for first time we will add a cuboid. By default, let's create a default cuboid here in the middle of the scene. And as you can see here, what I have right now, it's a cuboid, and I can focus on it just by clicking on this icon here. Okay, so I fit my view to be closer to that object, that particular object. Okay, so now let's see what we have here on the left. We have a model browser and we have a scene. The model browser is basically a library with folders in which we have a lot of components that they will be used by default, or they will be used in our simulations. And by default, we will have this view here, in which we have this one selected. And as you can see, we have a folder with robots and non-mobile robots, basically are ARM robots. And we have a lot of existing models with robots provided by manufacturers or users. So let's say we want to create or add a new model to our scene. So we just simply need to drag it there, and we can fit the view. So there's our new object. And as you can see here in the scene, we have the cuboid, which is not visible right now because it's small and it's hidden by the robot arm, and we have the robot arm. We also have a quite huge variety of mobile robots. As you can see here, you can play with them. All of them are mostly ready to use, so yeah, you can try to investigate how to use them. And also we have other objects that we can use, for instance, to decorate our scenario. Okay, and this is, for instance, a plant. Or we can use another one, which will be a person there. Okay, and we can have even other things like, for instance, walls of different heights. This is convenient if we work with mobile robots, moving on environment, a maze, something like that. Okay, and all these objects, as you can see here, have been added into the scene. The scene represents basically the list of objects that will be used in our simulation. And as you can see, by default, there are some objects already created for you, but all the objects I have created have been appeared here in the scene. And the most important thing about the scenes or the objects, and we will see that into detail, is that they can have different, or there's a hierarchy on the objects on the scene. So if you click here on the plus sign, you deploy or expand the full hierarchy, and you have different objects. You can see here, yeah. And for instance, in this case, what we have, this is the root node, or the root object, which is the parent, and it has one single child, in that case, another object, and it has another child, and it has another child, and this one has 3 childs, and this one has additional childs, and so on. So there's like a tree having a lot of objects. And the important thing here is that a parent can affect how the child behaves. Okay, so for now that's enough, and let's also see how, for instance, this cuboid here, which is hidden right now by the robot, we can modify the position of the objects by clicking here, and we have this translation a dialog in which we can modify the X and Y position. So if we just right-click right somewhere on the scene, we will see that we can move the object. Okay, we can also do it along, for instance, a specific direction like Z. Okay, and we can also rotate the objects. For instance, we can select the robot and rotate it, as you can see here, depending on the axis we select. And then we can also set the properties for our simulation, and in particular this is using the bullet library, which is what I recommend by default. So I don't recommend to modify these things unless you know what you're doing. But as a simulations engine, what it's in charge of moving all the objects on our scene and trying to detect all the collisions and react against each of the objects. Okay, so we will see that in detail later. Okay, so for instance, if we run the simulation, we have here the play button, and we have the person that was moving around the scenario. Okay, we can pause it and we can stop it. Okay, and finally, what we can do is to change the view of my scene. So if I select this, I have this normal view, but I can have also a top view here, which might be useful for some purposes. Okay, and yeah, okay, so let's return back. Okay, so in this presentation, I have briefly introduced how to use VREP and some of the capabilities. Thank you very much.